All right, family. Black Power. Black Power is the truth hour with General Sarasun said he kicked back. Get your mind ready for some information that's guaranteed to be heavy. We got a powerful one today, family. We're going to be talking about the great African temple of Baalbek, Phoenicia, which is ancient Canaanite genius, which is in modern day Lebanon today, one of the most massive temples built in the Levant, some of the most massively built columns on the planet Earth. And so we most definitely going to be tapping into this. Before we get started, family, I want you to most definitely check me out over at Patreon. We just dropped the Shabaka Stone today. It's hot off the press. You need to get over there and get that information dealing with the ancient Memphite theology. Over 500 exclusive live streams on my Patreon, link at the top of the chat. Also, kingseti.com, online marketplace, official General SETI products, t-shirts, DVDs, hoodies. We got it all for your family over there. You can become a member right here on General SETI, Sarasun SETI's YouTube page. Get access to exclusive material. And please get a video a thumbs up, like it because you love it. Share it with your family and friends. Comment. Just don't say nothing stupid, because you will get banned, family. So let's talk about this. Now, a lot of people think, that people, we just making this up. They say black people claiming everything. You didn't cut us out of everything. Now, when we expose the truth, now we claiming everything. But we got the receipts. We got the receipts. We showing up with the receipts. Now, Baalbek, and let me get the map up there. So, a lot of times people don't know where it's at. You see, so now let me get that out of there right quick. We talking about Baalbek, which is to the far right. At the top, you see Baalbek. This is the city where this great temple is located, and some of the largest stones. You got some 1,000-ton stones over there. And so the thing is, the only people on the planet Earth that was successfully moving that level of stone, that with all of the mechanism and machinery that could move that type of stone, was the ancient Egyptians. And so we most definitely gonna tap into that. But when we start talking about, again, Canaan, and when you go into the Bible, and Canaan was the brother of Ethiopia, was the brother of Egypt, was the brother of Libya. So most definitely these were African people according to the Bible, and even according to history. And even going up into Turkey, because another one of the Canaanite sons, Heth, became the Hittites. So when you start talking about the Trojans, when you start talking about the Colossians, which was, on the Black Sea, and Herodotus makes mention of the Colossians, on the Black Sea, would look just like Egyptians. And so, the Hittites. And so, even far up to Turkey, even beyond Turkey, going into, what today is called southern Russia, on, the bottom Caucasus Mountains, even over the Caucasus Mountain, there were black colonies had went over in them areas. They were mining for various minerals and things of that nature. And so our peoples was all throughout this area. Okay, that just got to be, it's got to be made clear. You see Byblos, where you get the term Bible, and Byblos is Phoenician, meaning papyrus. You see, showing that the Nile Valley traditions were deep down, even all the way into Turkey, even into Colossians, because Herodotus said that the Colossians were an Egyptian race. Let's just deal with that. So you see Byblos, and then you see today modern Beirut, and which is probably the most war-torn city on the planet Earth. They've been fighting for the last 2,000 years over something that don't belong to them. You got Sidon. This is where you get for the Phoenicians from, Sidon. You see, which is I think is the oldest son of the Canaanites, and I put it up there just not too long ago. How the Talmud, all of them, they validate that the Canaanites are Negroes. Okay, Negroid. This is what is read in the Talmud. So I don't know. I don't want nobody to run from them facts. This is not something they have identified. Even the word "kush" in the Ashkenazi, literature as being a derogatory word, meaning nigger, Negro. Okay, this is clear. And this has been validated all throughout the press, through the Talmud. Matter of fact, in the Talmud, they clearly say, i.e., nigger, Negro, when they talk about Canaan or Kush. Okay, matter of fact, I might have it still in there. Let me see. I had is it still in there? No, it's not in there. It's not in there right now. But okay, but at the same time, I ain't gonna even force it. And then you got Tyre, Tyree. You see, which is when you go over into the Tyrrhenian Sea, which is the on the west coast of Italy, the Tyrrhenian Sea, which they call the Etruscans. A lot of people don't know that the Etruscans were great allies with the Phoenicians. That the Phoenicians had temples in Etrusca. You see, which it was no Rome yet. And so that's why people ask. They say, well, why have the Etruscans been here? Because they African. You understand what I'm saying? Why would they hide them? They wouldn't have no need. They wouldn't have no need to hide the Etruscans. You see what I'm saying? If they thought they was Caucasians, they would venerate the Etruscans. But the fact is that they gave so much to Rome, everything that they got, from their alphabet, from their building, their architectural know-how, from the leadership, writing, all of that come from the Etruscans, who were close to the Phoenicians, close to the Carthaginians. Matter of fact, the Carthaginians and the Etruscans were allies against the Greeks. You see, and so you talking about early on, just like I showed. If you see one of my shorts where I showed the African that's on the wall of Kenosis, they didn't took it, so it's in the museum. And so you got all these vases, where they try to call them Negro boys, but it's all Ethiopians, vases from Etrusca. You see, from Etrusca in Rome. And so when we read these Greek literatures and they say the Egyptians look like the Ethiopians, then we know they know exactly what they talking about. You see, because they made so many sculptures of the Ethiopians, we're not mistaken by what they mean. You see, and so the ones that they saw when they was there was, they looked just like any other Ethiopian. Okay, but they did say as you get closer to the equator that they got darker, but technically they were the same people. I mean, that's understandable. You see, but and so this area was most definitely indigenous Ethiopian land, what they call Canaanite. And you can see right there, that's the head of what many people believe is Hannibal. You see him with the woolly head, African, and on the other side, if you have not seen the coin, it has an elephant on the other side. A lot of people think it's Carthaginian. The coin is not Carthaginian. The coin is from Etrusca. It's an Etruscan coin, and that hurt. You see what I'm saying? That's hurting, because they want to say slaves don't get their face on coins. You see, slaves don't get great monuments. They don't get that. This is nonsense. Did they see this? Only royalty and those of high status get their face on coins and on statues and things. They don't carve slaves, things that they believe are lesser than them. You see, And so this is showing you, the original blood of Phoenicia, of Canaan in this temple, which, you're looking at today. And so they built it during the time of the Romans. But see, what we have to understand, that the Romans conscripted native masons, you see, and masons from Egypt. People don't understand that. As they conquered into these lands that don't belong to them, even the temples that you see in Egypt that were built during the Ptolemaic era, built during the Roman era, they were built by native masons that had the know-how to do these things. And so when you're looking at this temple, now the columns on this temple is crazy. You see what I'm saying? The temple, the columns on this temple is crazy. These columns is 82 with the capital. I think the shaft itself is 77 feet. I believe it's 77 feet high. And with the capital, you talking about 82 feet. These are the tallest columns on earth. Okay, must be clear. They're even taller than the columns in Karnak that was built by Seti and Ramesses. Now those columns are pretty high. They are 77 feet all together. But with the column and the shaft and the columns on these particular columns at Baalbek is even taller than the columns at Karnak at the Hypostal Hall. And so I'll give you a clear, see if I can get that up there. Let me get that one out of there. So you see them right there. And what's crazy is that they built on top of granite. This was already a place of great spiritual importance. And so many times, wherever you at in the world, normally when you're doing research, you can find out that there's temples that have been built on top of temples, have been built on top of temples, been built on. So you might find 5, 6 different foundations in one area. You feel what I'm saying? You might find 5 or 6 foundations. And so the foundation is clear, is far older than anything that the Romans, and again, they conscripted. They conscripted. And so, Baal is the storm fertility god. He's in essence very similar to Shango, and they say that and similar to Set. Okay, because we're talking about storm deities. And so let me get down here and drop a little knowledge on it. Now, as we also understand, the Canaanites evolved into the Phoenicians. You see, evolved into the Phoenicians, and who later evolved into the Carthaginians. Okay, and so Baal was one of the most important deities of the Canaanites, of the Phoenicians, and the Carthaginians. And so this temple, this great temple, now the Greeks associated Baal with Helios. You see now, so we also got some solar worship in there too now. But they say that he was closely related to Set. So many times, you got more than one god that they are associated with. Okay, so you had Jupiter, a temple to Jupiter, which is Amen. You see, which is Amen. So many of these deities that you see, and when you look at Baal, you see, if you haven't seen, he looks very similar to the Pharaoh with the crown and the smiting of the enemy. So, of course, we understand that, I treat Canaan and Phoenicia no different than I treat Kemet and Ethiopia, that this is a brotherhood, sisterhood, that this is a family of nations that come out of one bloodline. And, and they pretty much look out for one another. So if there's, something going on, and they tend to come to each other's aid. So if it was anybody attacking Canaan or Phoenicia, the Egyptians would come to the Ethiopians and the Egyptians would come to the aid of the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, as we seen with Taaka. As we seen with even the 18th dynasty pharaohs, the Tutmosis, they didn't just run, the adversaries out of Egypt. They chased them out of Canaan too, because that was their brother sister nation. And so they took care of business down there too. And so, when pretty much they never really colonized, the Egyptians and the Ethiopians never really, this is a family member. But when they understood that these outsiders was plotting, and so they had to take over administration of Canaan and put military down there, because they know at this point in time it's on and popping, and so ain't no sense of going back up into Egypt and leaving Phoenicia or Canaan unguarded, you see, because they on their way to come and try to take over again. So, Canaan was brought into the Egyptian empire during the 18th dynasty, pretty much of the 19th dynasty and the 20th dynasty, and under the 25th dynasty too, that it was brought under the control of the Nubians. They had, because you have to understand that this area was the front door into Egypt. You see, it was the front door into Egypt, and they, if they would attack Canaan more times than not, they was on their way to try to conquer Egypt. And so, they pretty much set up military and political administration in Canaan. Now you can see these columns, and again, it's some blocks on this temple, and not just the temple itself, the platform. Man, they got some large, and people have, if you haven't, and I'm gonna have to, highlight this temple a little bit more, because a lot of people don't tap in. Man, the blocks, and see, this temple is older than when the Romans, the platform that the temple is on could go back 4,000 or 5,000 years. You see what I'm saying? Like during the time of the Old Kingdom, where they were building the Great Pyramids and things of that nature. And I didn't see many Caucasian, they acknowledge, they like, well, this looked like ancient Egyptian masonry. You see, Egyptian masonry. And the Phoenicians was highly prolific in architecture too. Now, I'm not taking any, but it's usually in unison. This is a confederation of African nations, and there's a lot that was shared back and forth with the family members. Ethiopia, Punt, even in the land of Punt, Aksum. You can see with the great stela of Aksum that they still had a highly prolific understanding of megalithic structures. Even them stela in Aksum, that's one of I believe was the largest stone that had ever been raised. You talking about over 500 tons, and they raised that stela up. You see what I'm saying? They raised that stela up. It is the largest stone that has ever been raised. So even in Aksum, they still had a prolific understanding. Only in a few areas on the planet where you go, especially the Nile Valley. The Nile Valley is primary. Aksum, Ethiopia, Sudan, Egypt, and Canaan. Do you understand what I'm saying? Those four nations right there are the megalithic masters of the ancient world. And then they took it to India, and India is the next, but they'll, They are behind the African states, as great as they believe, and they think they responsible for it, but it's the African Kushites that put that over there. But anyway, we're talking about. Let me get down here. Yeah, so you see and say the megalithic, some of the largest stones ever used in antiquity. You see, you talking about some of the stones on Baalbek's foundation. Some of the stones weigh 800 to 1,000 tons. Listen to me now. They say they predate the visible Roman structures. You see, their scale suggests pre-Roman engineering traditions, possibly tied. They see, and then here they go, possibly tied to earlier Near Eastern cultures. Who else gonna put it there? But see, they just don't want to come out and just say what it is. This is why Baalbek is often cited as far older than the Roman Empire, even if Rome made it famous. You see, so let's come down here. Now it tried to now I put in there. I said, well, did it come from? Did the technology come from Egypt? And and it tried to dance on me. It says, listen, the argument usually rests on three real observations, not fantasy. Megalithic stone size. This part is legit. Baalbek's foundational stones, 800 to 1,000 tons. Listen what the AI say. Egypt is the only civilization we know for sure that quarried monoliths this size at this scale, transported them long distances, set them with precision. Okay, you talking about Aswan, you talking about Giza, you talking about Karnak, you talking about Luxor, and they tend to leave out the 25th dynasty, and not just the 25th dynasty, but Nubia in general, and Aksum along with Nubia. Okay, Aksum along with Nubia, where they quarried that and moved it and set them or raised them with precision. You see, so so what AI said, only Egyptians worked this big. Now, I mean that's just what it is. You see, that just, and not only did they work, they did it for over 3,000 years, and so that right there is. But they say at the end of the day, that does not prove that the Egyptians did it. Okay, and so I knew some things to put in to make it straighten up real quick, and it did and they also said that Egypt absolutely operated in the Levant, military campaigns in Canaan and Syria, trade networks, Egyptian temples, inscriptions, and governors in the region. So the Egyptians, a lot of people don't know that the Egyptians got temples in Canaan and in Phoenicia and things of that nature. So it ruled Canaan in the New Kingdom. Temples to Amun and Ra found far outside of Egypt. Egyptian craftsmen exported stone, art, and engineering knowledge. Okay, and so, but and so this can go on, and I had to fight with it to get it to straighten up. But it knows that the ancient Egyptians are the only masons, I ain't gonna say free, but masons and architects that could, because you can't find nothing like this in Rome. You can't find nothing like this in Rome. And so that's just like when you look at the temples in Egypt, whether it was Edfu, that was a temple that was built during the Ptolemaic time. Edfu also, I believe the temple of Isis was built at Philae, was built during the Ptolemaic era. I know Edfu. I know I believe Asna was built during the time of the Romans. It's a megalithic, boy. There's some megalithic columns in that temple too. Asana, which was sacred to CANAAN. I know the Romans contracted that temple. African architects put it there, so it don't make no difference. And but you know, but showing you that even though the Romans and Greeks contracted temples, it was actual Africans, architects and masons that put it there, you know, as they had always been putting them there. So the Greeks and Romans had nothing to do with those temples. And so they may have forced the Africans to put their face on them, but that's about all they could do. They could not duplicate it. You cannot go to Rome or none of that and find, you know, and when you look at and the Romans, you know, and a lot of people got to understand a lot of what you see in Rome and in areas in which Rome ruled, the AI documented that they carry Egyptian and Ethiopian masons and architects to them areas and built them. So a lot of that Roman architecture that you see all around the world was established by African architects. Okay, this is facts. But anyway, family, I appreciate y'all being here with the general. You know, I'm trying to stay to this. That's right. They already know the arches coming. You can go. They got arches all over Egypt. You know, they got arches all over Egypt. I've seen them myself. But anyway, family, I appreciate y'all, man. We just getting started this evening. Stay with the general. Get over to Patreon. I got that Shabaka Stone presentation. It's a deep presentation. We're going to have to touch on that again and again, but get over there and get it. The link is at the top of the chat, and I'll be right back. Arm yourself with knowledge. Bang on the wicked beast. Daily liberation through African education and confrontation. Boom. Black power.